Hello everybody, and welcome to Greg's Vintage Workshop, where I'm working to restore history one piece at a time. Tonight we're going to be doing part 3 of the Phillips B5X04A radio that belongs to my son-in-law. In part 3 I'm going to be using Tinkercad and my printer to make some custom parts to replace some broken shafts on the upper push button section, as well as working on trying to repair and restring the dial cord. We may have a couple other things inserted in there as well. I'm probably going to show you some other additional things. But for now, let's get started. Okay, so I've been working on these push buttons, and I used some sewing machine oil and lubricated each of these pivot points, and they all seem to be working pretty good now that way. But I need to get some deoxit down switch. There's no good way to do that, so I'm going to try and spray it down alongside this shaft through this opening here and through these openings here, and hope some gets down inside there. So I think we can do that. Okay, so I got a couple of these push button levers on the top that have broken off, and I know that I've got the one piece, and I'm going to have to try and super glue it. Okay, I know it's not the best view in the world, but I've got to try and get this piece glued on here perfectly vertical and cleanly, so that it doesn't bind it from going in and out of the slot. And I've been trying to sit here brainstorming a way to do it. I came up with the idea of using this straight blade razor, which should be perfectly flat, and I'm going to spray some of this mold release on it, which I don't know if it'll keep the super glue from gluing to it or not, but I'm hoping it might. So I'm just going to spray just a little bit on there. I don't want to put enough on there to contaminate nothing. We're going to put a little bit on there, and then we're going to take a little super glue and stick on there and see if we can't get this thing. I just wiped a little of that off because I'm not sure if it dries or not, because it's been so long since I've used it. But now I got to get my super glue open, and let's go ahead and, before I get the super glue open, see if we can get this clamped on here. I've got these self-closing tweezers. We'll go like that, and then hopefully that's close to being as vertical with that as it can be. And then I'll see if I can get some glue on this and get the other one in place. And I've got another pair of those tweezers right here I'm going to try and clamp the actual part in place with. So, see if we can get the super glue open, get a little bit on there. And I realize you can't see because I've got you zoomed in, but I basically have this rapid fuse super glue here that I'm hoping that I can get a little bit on that. I don't want a lot of it on it, I just need a little bit on it. And I think I got some on my, I put some on like here. I want enough on there that I can get a good bond, but I don't want so much on there that it gooshes out everywhere. Alright, I got it on there. Let's see if we can get this thing on here. I'm trying to do this using a magnifier because I can't really see very well. what I'm doing here. And I can't very well fit that against there. Nah, this ain't gonna be easy. Sort of like that, but not. Shoot. Stick. Stick until I get my other tweezers in place anyway. Like that, and then we'll kind of gotta get that thing in place. I can't tell if I got it in place. I know it's crooked there. Can't really tell what I got going on here. Hopefully I'm not blocking you guys' vision. I know I am. So let's see if we can. Can't tell if I'm up or down too far. My magnification just isn't where it needs to be for me to tell if I've got that down far enough. It don't look like it's down far enough to me. Up and down looks pretty good. Back and front looks pretty good. But I can't tell if our overlap is proper. If the overlap is not proper, it will not glue sufficiently. I apologize for blocking your vision here, but let me get this set up. I'll bring you back. Alright, I got it glued on there. I think it's glued on there. Unfortunately, I don't think that the joint's pushed together good enough for it to stay. What I'm hoping is if I leave it here for a couple hours with this little clamp on it, that somehow the glue will somehow adhere, and then maybe I can feed some more liquidy type. That was super glue gel. Maybe I can feed some more liquidy type super glue around the joint and it wick in and somehow strengthen it. I'm not holding a whole bunch of hope out on this one. The one next to it looks like it's completely missing, which I don't know where it went, because the one next to it over here, which I'm off camera obviously right here, is actually missing. Now when I took it apart, the button was there. The button still has a piece in it, but the piece isn't long enough to be the piece, because right now the piece that's in there is slightly below the surface, and the piece that's on the part is, if I can get it out of here, only that long. And as you can see from the height of this, even if this was pushed down, and I know the other one's up, as far as it comes up, that I got to be missing a piece. So I have no idea what I'm going to do with that. I don't think that I can 3D print. I mean, I know I can 3D print a piece that small, but I don't know. I'm going to have to do some head scratching on this one, because I don't know that I'm going to be able to get that back, and we got to have it back. So let me see what I can come up with. Well, unfortunately, my glue job on that broken shaft did not work. So that only leaves me one other option, that's to try and 3D print it, which that's a pretty fine detailed piece, and two of them are broken. This one here, which is the one I tried to glue to, and the one that goes here that was below the surface. So I guess I'm going to go out to Tinkercad and get my veneer calipers and measure all the broken pieces and see what I can come up with. I've already removed the one over here, and I managed to get the contacts off. You can see the little brass contacts that are black here. There are two of them on that piece I took out, and I managed to get them off. So nothing else, the contacts should be nice and clean. I got these all cleaned up here on this side. I still have to do the other side, but let's go over to Tinkercad and see what we can do. Well, I guess it's a blessing in disguise because it's allowing me to get these contacts cleaned up nicely. That was one I just finished. Here's one I haven't started yet. See, they're pretty not so hot. And the back side on that one. Well, it sounds like the print's done. Well, it only took me about 2 hours, maybe a little more than 2 hours, to create this on Tinkercad. But by using my vernier calipers and just basic designs, I managed to get this thing, I think, pretty close. A lot of these little holes are so small, all I could do is hold the part up, hold the calipers by it, and say, yeah, that looks about like that. And all we can do is print it out and see what we get. And then obviously how strong it is and how well it lasts will be something else. I'm a little nervous about these tabs here, because that's really what holds it down when you push the button in. I'm not sure if the metal just sheared them things off or not, since it's just plastic, but I don't have any other choice because obviously these parts aren't available. So I guess I'll print one of these off, and it's funny because it took me over 2 hours to design it. It'll probably print in about 10 minutes. So I only needed 2 of these, but I went ahead and I printed off 3 of them, just in case I broke one, or, you know, another one breaks on the actual radio. So far it's turning out pretty good because the contacts, which I've now fully cleaned, or cleaned up really nice actually. And there's some that I already cleaned I haven't put in yet. Now I just got to try and get these all back in. Back this up a little bit. So the way these contacts went in is they go through and then they're bent over, so they kind of stack like this with the contacts to the middle like that, and then you got to shove them in the slot, but you can't shove them both in at the same time because of the bend on them. So I left the bends on one side because you can get one in, and then I straighten the other side. So I'll go ahead and see if I can get this other one together here. Carefully and without damaging anything, hopefully. So that's that half in. I don't think it's all the way pushed in yet, but it's close. And then I got to put this one in on top, and then once I get this one in, we should be able to get the tabs bent over. But let me do this off camera because I can't see what I'm doing without getting my face down in there, and I'll block it so you can't see it. So I'll bring you back. Okay, I got the contacts back in this one. They look pretty good. Not sure if you can see without this getting blurry how that those fold down in there, but I think it's going to work as long as it holds up. Like I said, the 2 little tabs that stick out that the little catches catch on to hold it down when it clicks in place is going to be the deciding factor if it's going to work or not. But go ahead and get the other one done that I got to do, and bring you back. Okay, so I got this whole push button mechanism all sorted out, and obviously I had to print 2 new bars that went through there, and I had to transplant the contacts into the new bars I printed and all that, and I got it all back together again. Required me to take all this all apart. Got it sorted out, got it working. I reprinted twice because the first one I did in PLA and they didn't hold up, it broke pretty easily. So the second one I printed in PETG, which made it stronger, and I was happy with that. But I was going to have to take it all physically apart again. I didn't want to do that because I didn't want to fatigue the metal where there was a couple of twisty things that held them together. So what I wound up doing was the pieces that I had printed, I wound up splitting them in half and making pads that I could glue together. I had to do that all within the confines of the movement, and I've got that all done. It's all in there. I'd show you now, except it's all together. The pads are basically on this end right here, up against that, so that they would have the movement to be able to go in and out. Now in the process of taking them back and forth, at one point this side here, which typically on this plate just like raises up, it has to be like at a 90-degree angle to get it to go down in that slot. Well, there's a spring here and there was a spring here. Well, at one point while I was messing with this, all of a sudden it decided to explode out of there, even though it wasn't on 90 degrees, and that spring went flying into oblivion. I tore my shop upside down, right side up, cleaned all the benches, cleaned everything I could clean, could not find it, ran a magnet on the floor, could not find it. It would have had to have gone up and over to the right. I looked up in the rafters, I looked everywhere. Bottom line is I couldn't find it. So what I did was I 3D printed out of PETG a spring that's got a very paper thin roof and is going to be held in place with a screw, an existing threaded hole that was in there, and it couples around this side metal right here. So I'm getting ready to put that on there, and we'll see what we get. Let me get you a different angle. So this is the final version in Tinkercad for the push button shaft. Once the one had broken, I needed to make it in a two-piecer, so I split it. I added the ends here. You can see one I put together here. Decided it might be easier to add a key to it, so that when I have it and I'm trying to stick it in the actual radio to glue it as tight as everything is, I figured that key might help. I was going to put one on the side, on one side too, but not enough room in there. So yeah, so Tinkercad to the rescue. Okay, so here we are. I got you a little bit different angle. It's going to go in right there, and I have two of these because I printed one and then I used it to make sure it was going to work, and it got stressed during that process, so I decided to print a second one. So this is going to be the new one that has had no pressure put on it yet, and we'll see if we can get this in here without screwing anything up. So I took the dimensions so that it would fit around this framework perfectly. Assuming I can get the screw to start here. It should anyway. It looks like it started. So I just spin that on there and keep it square to the thing there, and there it is. It's on there. Now I'll bring you back over and show you how it works from the, well, you might be able to see from there how it works. So if I push this one, I don't have the button on it, but if I push that one, see, I don't know if you can see that or not, but this is putting a slight downward spring pressure on this plate so that it allows that to raise up and push it back down. It's taking the place of that metal spring. It's made out of PETG, so it should hold up fine, plus we still have the spring on the other end. I think it's going to be fine. Okay, so now it's time to start thinking about restringing this lower dial cord that I had to remove. Well, it was broken. Actually, I didn't have to remove it. It was already broken. This string here is intact and still working fine, but the lower one is the one I've got to restring. So I'm going to have to get the old one over here, as well as the destructions, and see what I can figure out. Okay, so this dial cord was actually not string. It's actually a very, very, very fine multi-strand metal cable. And what I did, because it was broken, was I created 2 slip knots with as little material as possible and tightened it up, and then I put a dab of super glue on there. But the problem is I probably lost at least an inch of total length off of that, so whether or not it's going to work or not, I won't know till I can figure out how to get it threaded on there and see what it does. But since it was metal cable, I figured I had to try and give it a shot, and I guess if it doesn't work, we can try using some sort of dial string, but for now, that's what I got. Okay guys, it was a nightmare. I don't like dial cords, but I managed to struggle through them usually, and I did on this one as well. The AM and long wave dial cord was fine, and I didn't change it out, so I didn't mess with it. The FM one is the one that was broken. It was broken both in the actual metal cable that I was telling you guys about, which is the one right here under my finger, as well as the actual string portion, which is this side right here of the spring. So the way this goes is it wraps around this pulley on the bottom, comes across, goes to another pulley on this side over here, which is flat like this, and turns it and takes it to the drum back here. Let me get you a little closer. See if we can get an angle for you to see this. Okay, so I moved the camera around. So here's the flat pulley. So that cord comes across top, goes around this flat pulley here, goes down to the drum, and wraps around the drum from the bottom counterclockwise, if you're looking at the way it's looking right now. The other side of the string comes from this side, comes down, wraps a couple loops around the tuning shaft here, and then comes up to this little pulley here on this side, goes around that side, and wraps back around that drum across the top, like a clockwise direction if you're looking at it from here, although both those may be reversed depending upon the way you're looking at this. And they both have to attach inside that drum. So I take the drum off, number one, to try and get them in there. Oh my god, that was a nightmare. I told you that the metal one, I thought that I had lost about an inch. I had lost exactly an inch, because when I measured it compared to what the chart said it should be, I think it said it was supposed to be 737 millimeters, which equated to like 28.5 inches. It was exactly like 27.5 inches. So what I wound up having to do was splice another piece of, I didn't have any more wire obviously, so I spliced a heavier duty piece of dial string into it to lengthen it that inch. And then I had to get a new dial string for this other side over here. Bottom line is, it works. Let me show you. Okay, so right now it is in FM mode, I believe. No, it's in AM mode right now. So it's in AM mode. So if I turn the dial tuner, you'll see the AM one string across the way it's supposed to. No problems. But if I push the AM FM button here, it shifts a little lever in there. I don't know if you saw that or not. Let me undo it. Watch that right there. You can see this right here. Let me zoom in a smidgy. So if I push the button here, it'll move that lever, which basically pushes a shaft on the other side of this one. And now if I turn this, we're moving the FM, as you see the FM sliding across there. So it's all working. I lined everything up the way it should be aligned. It should be darn close to being where it needs to be, and everything's working. I got proper preload on the spring. That was, I probably got, you guys seen like a minute, 2 minutes worth of footage on this. I probably got 3 hours in getting that dial string squared away. But it's working now. Okay, so I replaced these two burned out incandescent bulbs, 6.3 volts each, with two LED bulbs, 6.3 volts each. So I think that that'll be a nice addition to this radio as far as brightening up the dial. I also have the original 6BR5 I-tube reinstalled. I don't know if it's any good or not because I can't test it. With my two testers, I don't have no settings for it. I did check it for heater to see if it had continuity between the two heater pins, and it does. Whether or not it actually works or not will be another thing. I did replace the 470K resistor on it because the one that was on it was testing 4.5 meg. So I'm not holding out a whole lot of hope for that bulb, but when I ordered the other 5 bulbs, he didn't have this one. So I figure I can at least get the radio working, and if it works well enough, then I can buy a new bulb for it. So we'll start out with this one and see what we get. You can also see back here I replaced those two capacitors there. The ones that were on there were cracked and deformed, and so I got those put back in there. I also got the light diffuser cleaned up really nice. And it's not perfect, but it's one heck of a lot better than it was. So probably go ahead and get that on there just to get it out of the way so it don't get damaged.